That was the Politburo greeting, so let's do that again. Startup grind. Woo, woo, woo! Woo! Okay.
Okay. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Okay.
Thank you for coming tonight. At the beginning, which we are trying to give to our attendees, it's one basic question. Where are you from? Who you are? How did you grow up?
Okay, so I'm Polish-American, or American-Polish. I come from a family of entrepreneurs and industrialists in Poland. We had our first factory in 1840. My father was a dissident. He was the last guy to leave a communist jail in Poland in 1989. And I landed in the US when I was 7. My stepdad worked for DARPA, the guys who invented the internet. He was trying to figure out how to stop Russian tanks. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I landed as a lawyer in the Valley. And along the way, I've been in the Netherlands. I've been subprime security lawyer, and then reinvented myself as a startup lawyer in Silicon Valley, working with foreign entrepreneurs.
Oh, thanks for the brief introduction. Actually, I wanted to ask you, what was the motivation to be a lawyer? Why?
Oh, okay. So my math skills were very bad, like bad. I couldn't add, and my parents told me that if I don't become a lawyer, I'm gonna live under the bridge. And I guess, from that point on, I gave up my hope of being an archaeologist or a historian and became a lawyer.
Okay, and when you decided to be a lawyer,
But an entrepreneur. I didn't want to be this, guy with the suit and a tie, and I detested all of that. Yeah.
Okay, and so what about your studies? During your studies, did you already have some job experiences which helps you to become a better lawyer, to get some practice?
I had no clue how to be a lawyer. I had no clue how to be an entrepreneur. I discovered, being an entrepreneur in New York after the financial crisis. I got axed from my job, which was, very corporate, and decided, to start my own thing. And honestly, it was, horrible. I was a really bad entrepreneur, and I heard Bob Dorff and Steve Blank speak about entrepreneurs. And they said that, if you don't listen to your customers, you're going to fail. And I was failing. And I started to listen to my customers, and I bounced back, and I became successful.
Yeah, you actually answered my next question. What was your first year running of your own company?
It was, by the way, I don't have his questions. It was bad, I couldn't get clients, and they were telling me I'm too expensive, and I keep hearing that I'm too expensive. But yeah, just listening to customers and getting out of the building and trying to meet people and listening to them, I think that was the hardest thing, and, learning from them. And I think that's, one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs, trying to get that product market fit and, understanding the customer and just getting feedback. And it applies to, small enterprises, startups, to large, corporates.
Definitely, as you mentioned, always about the customer. That's the most important part of being entrepreneur. And why did you decide to move as a lawyer to area of technology startups or technology companies?
So, during my product market fit discovery, I saw that, this is like an area that I had some knowledge about. And my stepdad always told me, you have to learn about light bulbs and how does a light bulb work. So I was always curious about, technology and things like that. So, I discovered a lot of things about technology, and I started to get clients in New York, and then people started to pop up from Eastern Europe and Latin America, Germany, and out of that, I got the idea to move out to San Francisco and also, do more things in Eastern Europe.
Who was your first startup client?
What's that?
Who was your first startup client? I mean, it was like a client startup.
Oh my God, she was horrible.
Do you remember it?
I
What was
do.
your experience? What did you learn from it?
What did I learn from her? Never trust your customer. She was, no, she was, difficult, really difficult, and she wasn't telling me the truth. And that was communication, and she had a hidden agenda, and she moved to San Francisco also and built a startup, got a Series B, and then the company failed.
And you helped?
Yes. Not with the failure, with the success. But in this line of business, there's a lot of failures, and it's sometimes really heartbreaking because you think the guys who are going to succeed are the guys that fail, and the guys who look really shitty are usually the guys who succeed. So it's hard to predict, and like 90% of the clients die.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that this is one of the most pretty not easy.
And that's the thing I learned as an entrepreneur, listening to Steve Blank, trying to do product market fit, is that you need to step out of your comfort zone, listen to customers, and learn from them, learn what they want, and adapt and give people things they want.
Mm-hmm. What about why did you actually decide to focus not only for US startups but mainly for European startups? And afterwards for Czech startups, so why did you decide to move from Silicon Valley, from America, from New York, or the ocean to Europe?
Well, I never felt like I moved. It was I'm both American and Polish or Eastern European, and I understand the mentality. So it was like a natural thing to work with people from the region, from Germany, from Latin America, and everybody's different in America. Everybody has an accent, and just people. I guess I had a good product, and still working on a better product, and that's why I became popular with Czech startups and startups in Poland, and yeah.
Maybe could you compare what are the key differences between the CEE startup market, or maybe Czech startup market, Czech startup scene, and a US startup scene? What are the key differentiators?
People go really fast in the valley, and here it's a lot slower. So the startups in the valley are more disruptive. The ones in Eastern Europe and Czech Republic are less disruptive, I feel. The copycat phase has ended, and people are really starting to think about innovation and disruption. And I think third difference, I think Americans are better salespeople, and they sell themselves by the kilogram. It's unbelievable. And then you have this, poor European founder at a networking event, and he just doesn't know how to network. And that's why I love Startup Grind, because there's a lot of networking, and there's a lot of awkward moments, and should I talk to this person for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or should I just move on and talk? So a Startup Grind is just always about meeting people and learning their story. So.
Yeah, I think that you described it perfectly. Maybe
did I miss anything? What do you think?
I think that it's about connection. It's about helping others, giving.
Oh yeah, I think this is how many of you know this Startup Grind motto? Give first, right? Become friends. Don't network, and the third one is.
Yeah, it's a connect.
And connect, right? So it's so non-European, where you take first, never give, and
making friends.
You never make friends. It's all business. So it's different culture.
Yeah, definitely. From my perspective, when I was right now, in Silicon Valley and the global conference, it was that you could really feel the values of Startup Grind there with all other guys around the world. from the other directors. And maybe I would add to your statement, if you are comparing to the Czech, and do you think that maybe we have a pretty good like a skilled workforce, the guys who are really competent in the technical area, maybe?
I think, across Eastern Europe, there's very good technical people, fewer salespeople. But I think there's something brewing here in the Czech Republic. Credo Ventures just, did a Series B for a $1 billion company.
The big thing from Tuesday.
From Tuesday, yes. And that means that money is going to get, reinvested. There's going to be more success stories coming out of the region.
Yeah, actually, Credo is one of your clients. So, did you help?
Yes, I worked on the transaction, yeah.
Is there any interesting what you can maybe share with us about this case?
It went very fast. I got the assignment maybe Friday morning California time. So I usually get up at 6. At 7 I got the email. The documents were supposed to come over the weekend and it closed in a week.
Wow, so it was pretty unusual so fast, or is it from your practice that often this kind of opportunities are coming?
It's always well planned. If a company is doing a Series B, that means, the business model is set and it needs money for execution.
Actually, this topic is interesting because how do you think that the young startup, for example, from the seed, should ask for the money, how to fundraise? What would be your advice, what they should do?
Never fundraise, always ask for advice. And if you fundraise, they always give you, advice. I think that's, the word. But, I think, have a good product, have, traction, and don't be afraid to, reach out to people and cold email, cold call, and just, reach out, use Twitter, LinkedIn, write, a nice message, ask people for introductions.
This is definitely the key point, as you mentioned, that in the US they are more like a sales skilled, so they are more like to open all opportunities around the social networks, every channel which actually could help them, they are trying to use.
Yeah, there's this great startup director from London. I love her, and she's, a great networker, and she's always, networking and giving, and, she's generous, right? Yeah, and it's a different culture.
Do you think that if, because our today's topic is, do you need to be in Silicon Valley? Do you think that, and do you feel that it's important for startups for European startups to be in Silicon Valley or in the US? Do you think that this is some kind of interesting to them?
I knew this question was coming. I wonder why. So my previous answer to this question was, it depends. Now I thought about it and I saw, things, and my answer is yes, you need to be in the Valley. You don't grow oranges in the Czech Republic or in London. You grow them in California. You don't become a movie star in Europe. You go to Hollywood. So you have to be there because of the investor network of entrepreneurs, openness to ideas, access to capital. $50,000 is not a lot of money for people in the US. It's, Vegas money. And here it's, oh my God, $50,000, that's, your yearly pension probably, or wage.
But because we got actually for this topic, we had a discussion a few months ago, and I remember that you mentioned that it's really important to have a really big vision.
Yeah,
this is one of the points which is pretty important.
Yeah, you have to have big vision, right? And if you don't, the problem in the Valley is that there's so many startups and so many VCs, and the business is so difficult of being a venture capitalist. You have to spend so much money to get, a 10% chance of a 10x return, that's just difficult. So your attention span is limited and you're just looking for the disruptors and the unicorns. And I think, that's the math.
When I'm looking for the map of unicorns, there are definitely more unicorns in the US than in Europe. And right now I saw that there is so much unicorns starting to be in Asia as well. But why do you think is that?
Asia? In the US?
Europe to US,
So there's one unicorn being produced in the valley per year. There's 10 unicorns in Stockholm in the last, 10 years maybe, or I think, it's just, there's so much, failed startups in the valley. People have knowledge and they know,
what fails, what works, and they're not afraid of losing money. That's the big thing. And a lot of times, and this is not Credo, Reflex, or Rockway that I work with. Disclosure. Those guys are not afraid of losing money or making mistakes. And in general, European VCs are just more conservative. More conservative, yeah.
I know right now we are talking about this thing. What do you think should be the first steps if the guys, startups from Europe would like to come to US? What they should focus on? What should be their first steps?
I think get feedback from customers. I mean, there's no reason to come to the US if your customers are not, pulling you in that direction. And, when you're building a product, you're not building a local product, you're building a global disruptive product. And if there's a reason for you to head to the US, it should be customers. If you're, there's three ways of, getting there to the valley. One is, getting accepted into an accelerator, which is, pretty, difficult or maybe easy for some. The other one is, going on a pilgrimage and knocking on all of the doors and trying to, get a meeting, which might be difficult if no one knows you and if you're just, from Jurek from Prague and, no one knows you in the valley. And that, it's difficult. And the third, way to get there is, getting a term sheet from, a solid investor.
I would just add today is that, as you mentioned, Accelerator today is here from the Czech investment market with us. Market, could you just raise your hand? Yeah. So definitely, if you are interested in some kind of accelerators or for what Czech Invest is offering, definitely after the event, talk to Market and she'll help.
Actually, I usually don't support the government because I feel the government is the problem. However, the Czech Invest people are really nice, and their guy in Silicon Valley, Miroslav, is a salt of the earth hustler, and he's going to help you out. So if you have the guts, email him.
Okay, thanks for the tip.
No, he's great. I love him.
And regarding investors, how do you think that, for example, they should look for the right investor? What should be like the manual, or how to look for a good, really investor who will help you, not only with the money, but maybe with some advice?
Okay, so you never want investors with money. Never. What you're looking for is serial entrepreneurs and people who have exited companies and have a solid network and have domain expertise in your field. The guys, and they can bring in follow-on investors. So that's sort of, key. So in terms of, picking an accelerator, you're looking for an accelerator that has a great angel network or investors that, come to demo day. If you're going directly to an investor, you want to make sure that he's an entrepreneur and he understands that you're building a company and you don't want to be micromanaged. And I think you should be looking for an investor that wants to maximize value and is not interested about controlling you and how you're spending your money.
How should founders work with the equity regarding, for example, with negotiation with investors? How they should work with the equity, even if they are, at the beginning of their startup?
Okay, so that's the best question. So if you hear someone, so how much equity depends on the risk profile of the company. So if you're a startup, the investors see one big, risk profile, and there's, different, risks. So, founder risk, execution risk. So the more risks there are, the more equity he wants to take. And there's investors that take a lot of equity. And if someone, tells you, oh, I want, more than 15% of your cap table, that means you should, run for the hills and tell them no way. So anything above, 15% is just, a lot. And it depends on the stage also.
Are there some investment tools, for example, in the US or in a valley, which the founders are using? I don't know, vesting or other tools which you are think that this is something useful, and maybe you can use it here in the Czech investment environment. Is there something like this?
So
Your experience.
AngelList, Crunchbase, everybody uses it, right? So you can look for investors. So, everybody should be on AngelList. Your mother should be on AngelList. Yeah, so I think use AngelList. There's other tools for managing a cap table, but AngelList and Crunchbase are the Bible. You should know this.
Okay, and I meant more about vesting or this kind of tools from the beginning if they are founding the company.
There's a great book by Brad Feld called Venture Deals. Mm-hmm. It's also the Bible. It's like the Old Testament. You should read it. And the title of the book is How to Be Smarter Than Your Lawyer. So, if I'm telling you, it's a good book. It's really good.
I am just thinking if here is a startup who is thinking about to be in Silicon Valley. Actually, is there anyone who is right now in the valley? Just raise your hand.
Or was.
Or was. Or will.
Okay, so there's a couple of hands.
Okay, and what do you think about Stripe and its services like Atlas for you?
I think it's great. It allows people to build, startups in the U.S.
It's helping you actually with the
Yeah, it's if you're bootstrapping, you can use Atlas. You open a bank account, but you get standardized documents, and that's okay. But the issue is do you want to do everything standardized that comes from a machine, or do you want to have some FaceTime with a lawyer?
Some knowledge, experience.
Yeah, right. And I had a couple of clients that used Atlas Stripe. They screwed up, and then we had to clean everything up after the financing. But just to your other question, it just came to me how to get there. You should use the investor network that you have locally. So I think this startup ecosystem here has extremely matured, and the investors understand that they need to do things the way they're done in the valley, and you can use them as a resource to get to the next stage.
As you mentioned, one of your clients is Credo Ventures. So Have you, of course, besides of the last startup, is there something interesting, some successful startup which you were part of the transaction or helping to Credo, to look for this kind of startups?
So as a lawyer, I always look for startups for clients. Every day I get emails. Can you? I'm so and so founder and CEO of so and so company. Can you help out? I usually don't have time to do all of these introductions, but I look for things for people, and I know there's VC funds that I've worked with that are looking for X, Y, and Z. So like I worked with Blue Yard Ventures in Berlin. They have, I think, an investment in Slovakia, and they're also in space now. So I send them stuff about decentralized economies and highly disruptive startups. So I work as a filter for a lot of people. But I recently worked for a YC company from Hungary. They raised $3.5 million after demo day, and Ashton Kutcher emailed them when he was filming a movie in Budapest, and he said, "Hey, I'm Ashton Kutcher. Can I invest in your company?" And the founder, my friend, thought this was some sort of robot on Twitter, and it was a joke, and it turned out it was really Ashton Kutcher who's knocking on the door and like, "I have a check for you." So that was like a funny story.
Yeah, I know that when I was in the Valley, that one of our directors in Dubai actually was in a coffee in Valley, and we just with Guy Kawasaki, and Guy Kawasaki just asked him, "Hey man, what do you have for some cool like a photo app?" And he was like, "Oh, is this really Guy Kawasaki? Okay, so this is my app. This is what I'm developing. Okay, I want to invest in it, and that's it."
Yeah, I mean, Startup Grind is amazing. There's so many small local chapters, and they meet at the global conference, and it's just the power and the energy and the same sort of values that drive people, and everybody is either an investor or a founder.
Okay,
That was the pink for a Startup Grind.
Thinking about some what I'm interested in and what should be interesting for others. That maybe you could tell more about your Czech clients, who because it's not only Credo, it's other. I think that you help some startups as well.
I'm a lawyer for Avocode. I think they're there in the room. They're a company from 500 startups. They were in the batch, I think, 2 years ago. I'm working. I have like a lot of clients from the Czech Republic and Poland and Hungary now. It's a lot of folks. So it's hard for me to list everybody. Avocode, of course, is my favorite because they're they're like a superstar and an underdog at the same time. Scruffy and hungry and doing interesting things.
Love you too, Tytus.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what's your most favorite startup. So right now we don't know.
There's IP Fabric, which got around from Credo a year ago. They do some stuff for networks, digital networks, and how to manage it. I have a client called Response Now. I have a client named EM Client. It's hard for me, after a while you start forgetting what these startups do, and they're just like oh, it's such and such founder, and he needs this. But there's Space Now, which I like, which is that space technology company that's based here in Prague. It has 2 founders.
Like a Space Now or
Space Now.
yeah.
I think they're doing cool things. They're not a client of mine, but they're Reflex, which is a client of mine, invested in them.
Yeah. And do you think that regarding back to the investor, do you think that it matters from where the startup is coming? The location, the country, for example, for the US, the investors, it's really matter from.
Yeah, I mean, again, my previous answer was to this question, and I thought about it again, and based on what I've seen with my clients, it does matter where you're from, and sometimes investors don't want to invest because they don't have a mandate to invest in such countries or regions. So I have a really, really excellent startup right now. They have almost $5 million in annual recurring revenue, but they're in a region that most investors don't cover. And it's a challenge to fundraise for them.
So do you think that could be some advice to startups? Just start on the local market.
No, go global.
Go global
from the get-go.
Okay.
And don't solve local problems. Solve global problems.
Okay.
So don't solve a problem in Brno. Solve a problem, that's a big European or global problem.
Mm-hmm. So solve the global problem and then move, if you are pretty serious about it, just move.
Apply to an accelerator. Apply to an accelerator.
Apply to an accelerator and after that move whatever you need.
Yeah.
Okay, and are you helping actually to some, do you have some clients from Asia as well?
Limited. I haven't tapped into that market. Maybe, Vu can hook me up with that.
Okay, so what's your experience so far? It's pretty close.
With Asia, there's a lot of things going on. China's a big market. Startups, are copying things in the valley. It's a big, China's a huge market, and there is, a culture of, entrepreneurship, which, communism hasn't, killed. But at the same time, it's sort of hard to do a startup with a culture that is not friendly to risk-taking and failure. And I think that's, probably, I'm not an expert in Asian topics, but I think, startups and capitalism is about culture. And you need to have a culture that understands, failure, understands, risk. And I think it might be sort of, difficult.
What is your vision? Where we are seeing you, Tytus, in the next 5 years with your clients, with your business?
I want to be part of the future, and I want to be with the winners. Mm-hmm. So that's, my vision of, the next 5 years. And, I want people to get rich. And I think that's the best social justice that's out there, people being self-reliant, creating jobs. And, I feel lucky that, as an entrepreneur, I've been able to create, jobs in the US and jobs in Poland. And yeah.
Was this UiPath the first unicorn?
That was my first unicorn.
Okay,
yeah.
So definitely in the next 5 years, I hope that you will do more.
I hope so. And go startup grind. Create some amazing companies.
Yeah, that's what we are trying to do here in Prague or around.
And you're doing a good job. Keep it up. One unicorn.
Yeah, I hope that we can help each other. Okay, what about some latest trends in Silicon Valley? What do you think is relevant to European market? What do you think is right now buzzing around the valley? I don't think only blockchain, but maybe different kind of trends.
My sort of take, if it's a trend, if I'm reading it in TechCrunch, it's already history. So that's why you have to be in the valley. You have to be at the epicenter of all of these things happening. So yeah, there's again, the big trend is digitalization and gathering data, processing data, and doing funky things with it.
And some automation and
Yes. Yeah.
stuff about artificial intelligence.
In general, I think the big trend, the big players are going to get bigger, and it's going to be harder for small players to break out. So Facebook is going to get big, Google is going to get big, Amazon is going to get big. Everything is going to get big, and that's why you need to be close to this elephant.
And what is the biggest challenge for you as a legal advisor? What is the biggest challenge for you?
For me, I think I get emotionally involved, and I just I want all of my clients to succeed, and by now I can smell failure miles away, and that's like you see someone and like you see certain signals that are happening. A co-founder is going to leave, or there's going to be co-founders fighting, or the company's going to get sold by the investors. So 3 years ago I had a company, and they kicked out one of the co-founders, and then let's see, how much should I tell you? And then the CEO himself got fired, and it's just heartbreaking. And the reason the company wasn't doing that well wasn't his fault. It was just the market went somewhere else, and he tried very hard, and he did something to he kicked out the other co-founder, and that was just bad karma coming back.
Was it doing something with Schenken?
No. No, but it's just getting emotionally involved in clients, and I don't want to be another lawyer who just takes in a client, services them. I take interest in the people I work with.
So you are trying to do, before you get some client, you are doing some analysis, research, or it's more about just a quick, evaluation of the guy who's sitting in front of you?
Yeah, so I had one client, I had a sort of, he was sort of shady, a shady character, and when he came in, I told my fiance that, this guy's gonna, screw his investors. And by golly, 2 years later, he emailed me, he said, hey, I want to, what can I do to screw my investors? And I was like, oh my gosh. And immediately, I called him up and I told him that, I'm withdrawing from representing you because you're about to, do this. And this is, happening in the Valley where, trust is super important.
So this is some kind of points or areas where you are focusing on when you are...
Yeah, I mean, it's because, it's such a big trust business, and, I'm working for investors, and they're asking me to scout startups in Europe, right? Or, working with startups to get them, funded. I need to be 100% sure that, I can work with, such an, client or an individual.
And what is your biggest success? Through all your career, what is your biggest success?
I think my biggest success is, reinventing myself and, I think, being able to reinvent myself and listening to what the market is telling me. That I think that's a big success. And I think, in terms of business, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I always dreamed about it. And it just, happened. And, I look back, running my own law firm, it's going to be 9 years in September. If you asked me 9 years ago if I would be at Startup Grind speaking or running my own law firm, I would tell you no. And I never imagined I would end up in California working with startups. So anything can happen. You just have to be super open-minded.
And fast.
And
Lots
fast.
of opportunities here.
Yeah, and like, fast, yeah.
And what is your advice to Czech startup guys who are sitting actually right now here?
Go big or go home.
Okay, so
And by that I mean, just go for the big financings, build big companies, and deliver value to customers. I think that's in essence, what you need to be doing, and really start seriously thinking about being the next UiPath. It's possible. Some guys from Romania proved it.
And from one of your presentations in Mexico, I know that you mentioned that the Americans love underdog.
Yes, Americans love underdogs. They just, if you're scruffy, if you have a funny accent, but you have promise, they'll give you a chance. And I think that's the beauty of, startups. You can fail, and you have to bounce back and do something new. So, like, I encourage all of my clients and customers to fail really quickly, because, you really can't get back the time.
Okay, thanks. And now let's have a look for the questions from audience.
Give me some difficult ones. I mean,
Yeah, there's no someone. Did you try to ask? Well, yeah, definitely ask.
I have one for you. In the of compensation, how often do you take equity? How would you go about a decision?
as a lawyer, I did it in the beginning. I'm doing it less often because I'm not in the business of picking winners and losers. I'm in the business of investing in winners, investing capital and investing my time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I'll just go through you.
I guess listening a lot or reading a lot what is going on, there is always topics about deals that has been good for the entrepreneurs, the founders, and not being that good for the investors, and on the other way around. In your experience, what is kind of like those things that kind of like should be on the table in order to have a deal that is good for both sides?
I think, you don't sign something that isn't good. There's sometimes circumstances that, force you into, taking, deals that are not great, right? But, if you're taking money from investors, they should be adding value to you as a founder and to the company. It's not just, giving you money and then, that's it. They need to, bring a network of customers, of experience. They need to, provide something.
So, do you remember an example of a deal that you that went bad for the investors?
Well, there's plenty of them,
What made them? So, what are the key things that happened on those deals that made them bad for investors?
They were over optimistic. They didn't understand the space. They didn't understand the space. They were focused on metrics. They didn't see the founders as founders, or other way around. They just looked at the founders and they didn't understand, the business.
So it was not part of what the term sheet was about. It was more about the investor's perception about.
Term sheets are, pretty standard. All of them. A lot of them are online, and there's a lot of resources on how investors think, and you can pull those things up. I think great investors bring value to you. It's not this concept that they're out there to try to screw you over and take advantage of you. You're building together a company.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm actually moving to Silicon Valley next month.
Awesome. Call Mirek.
Yeah, I've already told them. But my question is, what would you do in the first week when you arrive and the goal is to open an office of your company? What would you do?
Okay, so the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to be overwhelmed. There's so many events, there's so many people, everybody's, building the next, Facebook and Uber. Just, you have to turn off the noise and be very focused on what you're going to do. So focus. 2, get in touch with as many people as possible, and you need those people to vouch for you to the community, the community of meetups, investors, other startups, customers, and I think the third thing is don't be afraid to ask for help, and I think that's super difficult for foreigners in the U.S. And people outside of the Valley. Ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. That doesn't mean you're weak or you're clueless. It means hey, I need some help. So I think asking for help is important. And that's a great question, by the way. I would try to before I go, plan out meetups and write to the meetup organizers that, hey, I'm a Czech founder, I do IoT, can I present at your meetup, or, blah, blah, blah. You need people to, help you out and introduce you. You can't, just do it by yourself, parachuting yourself to the valley and, you're there and everybody's gonna just, clap and say, oh, you're here, wonderful. You really need to work hard to, get an investment or customers.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to ask? Okay, so...
I think there's a couple more questions.
Oh, sorry.
And it's International Women's Day, so I'm taking questions from female founders.
Okay, so I'm not female founders, but at least female. I would like to ask you, do you think that now we are living in a startup bubble, that it's a golden age for the startups and for the investment, and it will end sooner or later?
I think, the bubble is, you have to, I don't know. I think, it's an age when people are fed up with working for corporations, and I think the way the world has been ordered has been, I think, people are tired of the old model, this whatever model it was, and they're looking for new things, and something new is on the horizon, and, there's certain, new ways of working, new ways of, interacting with each other. And I think if there's, an inflation in price for startups and ideas, that's great. It means people are looking for things. And it's I think, we're living in revolutionary times. And, I wouldn't be surprised that, there's going to be a moment soon that Facebook will be a dinosaur and it's going to be killed by 2 guys in a garage from Prague or from Poland or from Berlin. It's possible. And, there's people like that out there. Okay.
Okay, so thank you. So hopefully from Prague.
Okay.
And also one more question. Do you know the TV show Silicon Valley? What do you think about it?
Okay. So the question is, do I like it or I don't like it, or is it real?
It's up to you.
That was the tough question. It's a pastiche. It's a comedy. It's Dobry Wojak fake. Is it, the real story about Czechs and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire? You tell me. So there are, bits and pieces that are, true. The acting is bad, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So female founders, no questions? Okay, awesome.
Does one have to patent a beverage? Does one have to actually patent a beverage? So let's say I was coming up RBB underdog, be competing with, let's say, Anheuser-Busch. Does one have to patent a beverage?
Well, I mean, if you need it to be a defensible product, probably you need it. But most technology companies, there's not a lot of things that are patentable because it's mostly founders. Maybe there's some IP, but with a drink, yeah, I think some of it should be patented. Anyway, startups are exciting. I love it. It's every day is super exciting, and the failures of clients and then their successes are amazing, and I love to share that. So I hope I encouraged you to set off to the valley or be here and build something amazing. Thanks.